Thank you for joining us today on our LinkedIn Live, Planet versus Plastics. How can brands take action for a sustainable future? My name's Nikki Stones and I'm VP of Marketing at CleanHub. We're in for a real treat today. We've got a fantastic panel for you and it should be a fascinating discussion. A warm welcome to Darcy McGilvray, Chief Marketing Officer at Simply Home, Caddy Pink, Global Sustainability Commercial Lead at Lush, and Zoe Lenkovic, Global Waste Management Specialist and author at the UN Environment Programme. Maybe we could just do some quick introductions. Darcy, why don't we start with you? Maybe you can just tell us a bit about yourself and your role.
Sure, yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Simply Home. So we do whole home furniture and we're a brand selling in the United States. We sell predominantly solid wood and upholstered furniture, very high quality stuff, especially for the price point. So our slogan is great quality is a right. And we sell online on our website and in retailers like Amazon and Target and Home Depot and Ashley. And I think that's an intro.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. And Caddy.
Hi. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. It's really nice to be here. I'm Caddy Pink. I work for Lush Cosmetics. So you guys probably know of it as the smelly shop on the high street. That's sells cosmetics. And I'm the Global Sustainability Commercial Lead. And I'm calling today from our in-house Green Hub in Poole, Dorset.
Ah, very nice. Look forward to hearing a bit more about that very shortly. And Zoe.
Thank you very much. Yeah, nice to see you all, and thanks for the invitation. I'm Zoe Lenkovic. I am a global waste management specialist. I've worked in lots of different sectors, always in waste management, and the last 10 years I've been focused very much on the issues of waste management or the lack of waste management in the global south. So I've been recently working for the United Nations Environment Programme, authored a couple of reports. One of them was on waste and the Sustainable Development Goals, and the other was the Global Waste Management Outlook, which I will talk a little bit about later on. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And of course, a very warm welcome to all of our listeners. We will have time for questions at the end, so please just ask them in the chat and we'll get through as many as we can. We've got a really packed agenda today, so we're just going to dig right in. Zoe, you mentioned the Global Waste Management Outlook report and the Waste and Sustainable Development Goals. Perhaps you could actually just set the scene for us and sort of tell us about, what is the state of global plastic pollution today and the mismanagement of waste? Big topic.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Nikki. Okay, so I've got quite a few numbers, so I am going to read, but later on I will be just joining the conversation normally. So here we go. Around the world, 1 million plastic bottles are purchased every minute, and up to 5 trillion plastic bags are used every year. Half of all plastic is designed for single-use purposes. Now, plastic is so handy, right? It's lightweight, it can be designed to have all sorts of important functions, and it's cheap to produce. But now we're addicted. So in the early 2000s, the amount of plastic waste we generated rose more in a single decade than it had in the previous 40 years. Today, we produce about 400 million tons of plastic waste every year. And without changes to current policies, global plastic waste generation is projected to triple by 2060 to over 1 billion tons every year. Now, around a third of all plastics produced are used in packaging, and most of it ends up in landfills or as unregulated waste. In the global south, where waste management is a luxury that many cannot afford, pollution from waste, including plastics, is spiraling out of control. Plastic waste blocks drains, leading to stagnant water where mosquitoes breed, or is burned in the open with serious impacts on people's health, with women and children disproportionately affected. In relation to climate change, the level of greenhouse gas emissions associated with the production, use and disposal of plastics is forecast to grow to a fifth of the global carbon budget by 2040. What's important with plastics, as with all the materials we use, is that we protect planetary and human health and don't store up problems for future generations. The Global Waste Management Outlook, the report that I recently wrote for the United Nations Environment Programme, found that the global cost of waste management services is around $250 billion. But when we include the hidden costs of waste, including climate change, harm to ecosystems and to human health, that cost increases to $360 billion every year. Waste generation is growing at a fast pace. At this rate, the global amount of municipal waste will double by 2050, and the costs, including the hidden costs of pollution, will increase to over $600 billion every year. The report found that only by concerted international efforts to prevent waste and recycle more can we have the kind of future any of us would like. So finding the right solutions isn't easy, but through knowledge sharing events like today and supply chain collaborations, a shift is starting to happen. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from the other speakers, and thanks again for inviting me to join the conversation.
Thank you very much, Zoe. I mean, those numbers are so staggering. It's hard to sort of even comprehend, actually, isn't it? When you actually think about that, it's overwhelming. I'm very glad that we're all here to be talking about the solutions as well. And actually, let's dig right into that then, actually, because I think what would be really good to start with is actually, I mean, you mentioned a lot of the plastic that's produced is packaging. And obviously, you know, that's only growing currently. So I think it's really good just to sort of understand what can companies be doing, what are companies doing, the types of initiatives to tackle that, and look at how we can be reducing packaging and looking at alternatives. Caddy, obviously Lush has been a pioneer in sustainability since its inception. You're doing some really cool things around waste reduction. Can you tell us a bit about some of those initiatives?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think, first of all, I would say we were pioneers by accident. So back when Lush started in the 1990s, you know, it was really by accident that we were pioneering in the realm of naked unpackaged products. So at that time, you know, the founders and the inventors of the product really didn't have the money to be able to purchase packaging or to buy the machinery or to kit out the stores. And so, you know, back then we were using upcycled drain pipes, anything from that to painting and then using chalkboard instead of signage. So it was really by accident that it all really started off and kicked off for us. But of course, now that we are more aware of environmental footprint in the world, we've also been sort of on our own journey. So we have invented along the way quite a few of unpackaged solid products. So we were the original inventors of the bath bomb, shampoo bars over liquid shampoo, solid bubble bars instead of liquid. So we do use now, along our journey, we use the tag, you know, how can we leave the world lusher than we found it? So our number one priority in that is really to produce solid, so completely unpackaged product where we can. And I think that's what contributes to the sort of iconic smell of Lush as well. So 60% currently of all of our product range is completely unpackaged. So I think since 2005, we've avoided around 14,000 tons of plastic from being produced just from the sales of just the shampoo bars and solid soap. And then we've since also invented the solid deodorant, the solid body lotions, massage bars, moisturizers, etc. And then on the flip side, for the product that we do end up using packaging for, we use both 100% recycled PP and then the prevented ocean plastic PET bottles as well. So in 2021, we did launch a scheme to be able to, it's called the Bring It Back scheme, for the customers to return their packaging to our stores. And then they receive 50 pence off of their next purchase, and then that ultimately gets sent here to the Green Hub in the UK. And this is really where it's our in-house recycling site, and this is where we process all the packaging, so clean it down. We have a granulator here as well. It's where we filter all our wastewater as well. And then it gets recycled, composted, or upcycled. So currently, it's around 81% of all our solid waste from all of our manufacturing and also all of the retail customer returns. It all gets recycled or recovered in some way.
That's so cool. And what I love, actually, you mentioned last time we spoke, Caddy, I think it's open to the public, the Green Hub too, right? So anybody can come in and have a look around.
That's it. Yeah, I think that the whole idea of the Green Hub was for it to be sort of a blueprint for other businesses and also, schools. So we have university students also. We had a school here come this morning, actually, just to learn about all the ways that we upcycle our waste. And we have a little shop as well. So anything that we can't actually recycle, it goes to a shop, and that's open to the public. And then the donations from the sales of anything we can't use anymore goes to local charities as well.
Very nice. So, and I think it's in Poole, is that right? So if anybody happens to be in Poole in Dorset, go and visit the Lush Cosmetics Green Hub. I certainly will do, for sure. So moving on to Darcy then, I guess, it's a slightly different business model, of course, at Simply Home. I mean, Simply Home is a brand that wants to do the right thing, that's prepared to use resources to protect nature, but it's not your core business in the same way, perhaps, as Lush. Can you just talk us through how you think about sustainability, the strategy?
Sure. Yeah, it was interesting to hear Caddy explain that it happened kind of by accident. I wouldn't say that our current stance on sustainability is by accident, but it's an evolution. It also, Zoe's excerpt as well, she was using words like spiraling out of control. Things are spiraling out of control, and we aren't planning for future generations. And under that, ominous kind of under that language, it really inspires you to do as much as you possibly can. And that's where we're coming from, is that our founders are sustainable forward. And one of our core values at Simply Home is to do the right thing. So whether that comes from, social activism or sustainability, or how we treat our own employees, or our customers as stakeholders, or our planet, we're just trying to get up in the morning and do the right thing. And from that comes a lot of decisions that we make as a company to align with that. So we do things like, we're a plastic neutral business with our partnership with Clean Hub. Clean Hub is an amazing organization that helps companies like ours offset our plastic. At the same time, we're trying to reduce as much plastic as we possibly can as well. And that's going quite well, making us more so a plastic positive company. That's great. That aligns with what our targets are. Our goals, I think, is to collect over 100 kilograms of plastic waste by 2025, and Clean Hub is a great partner to get that done. We're planting trees as well to offset carbon. We recently overhauled all of our packaging to eco-friendly packaging. I think that's one of the biggest impacts we can make. We already acknowledge that packaging is a major part of the issue, and renewable, recyclable, compostable materials are available now in a way that they just weren't 20 years ago. So I think that it's pertinent that all businesses make this switch and try to utilize the best possible composition of packaging that they can. So that's something as well we're doing. We use sustainably sourced wood. We're trying wherever we can to use recycled fabrics and materials. We're using kind leather, is another type of leather that has a lesser ecological impact. We're using recycled polyester in many of our products as well. So I could go into more detail, but you can see we're trying to do the right thing where we can. But it's one of those things where when you take a look at the situation we have with our planet, and that things are spiraling out of control, that's why I think that these types of LinkedIn sessions are so beneficial, in the sense that we really need to get to the bottom of what can brands really do. I know that we can look ourselves in the mirror and we know that we're doing the very best we can, but there's a world of contradiction when it comes to not Simply Home, but the whole business world, where I'm a proponent. I know Zoe agrees that it's government regulation that will provide a even playing field for businesses to not just voluntarily do the right thing, but for it to be mandated across the board. Because for every business where there's like a Simply Home or a Lush trying to do the right thing over here, there are some that are cutting corners over here, and it's just an equation that needs to be equalized, not by volunteerism but by regulation. That's my
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's something we'd probably all very much agree with, and I think it'd be really good to dig into that a bit more actually, and what we think governments need to do. I'm quite before we get to that, I'd be quite interested actually just to talk about some of the challenges that both Lush and Simply Home have faced with this as well, actually, because there's some fantastic initiatives. I think it's really great to see proactive brands taking action, but actually, even from your own perspective and your own goals, is it working? What have been some of the challenges you've had? Are there some things which you've tried and haven't worked? Caddy, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, of course. I think one of the biggest challenges Lush has is the promotion of solid product, I would say, as well. So we've done quite a lot of window campaigns in our retail stores around the scientific and hygienic benefits of moving to solid soap versus liquid, for example. But the reality is that a lot of customers aren't there yet, and they do prefer those liquids over solid. So that's definitely for Lush on a personal level been a big challenge. We're also, it's also a push for us to get the customers to return the packaging. So at the moment we're around 20% return rate. So really, we need to be aiming for 100% in order to really take full ownership and have full control over where our packaging is ending up. So that's for sure a big challenge. We have also gone sort of the complete opposite way, and we've trialed stores. Our first store in Milan, in Italy, was our zero waste, sort of a completely unpackaged store. And in all honesty, it just was not commercially viable, and the world just wasn't ready for it, unfortunately. So that was really a sad moment for us to have to shut that down. And I think one of the sort of global challenges that we have is that different countries and different states are different paths, and they have different recycling infrastructures. So here in the UK, I think is it around 11% of what people actually recycle actually gets recycled. I think in the US it's even lower. So I think that is also a global challenge, that we can't really have what we have here, an in-house recycling hub in all the different countries that we have. So trying to match that globally and have the right incentives in different locations is quite tricky to manage.
It's really interesting you say that. I mean, there was, I know certainly one of the big UK supermarkets, they tried to remove plastic packaging on their own fruit and vegetables, like the fruit and vegetables they have in store of their own brand, but sales plummeted about 30%. And actually, because a lot of the people that were buying there's obviously sort of a subliminal thing that actually it's not going to stay fresh for as long, therefore they didn't buy it. And there's education needed, and these things, it's not always it's always straightforward, like you say. It might just be that consumers are just not there yet on some of these issues, and that's going to take a bit of time. Darcy, what about you in terms of at Simply Home, in terms of some of the challenges you guys have faced?
So many challenges, yeah. Like looking at the situation, we need to be cognizant of what are the things that are actually degrading the environment the most. And so a scenario where we build furniture and we ship it to our warehouse and then we ship it to the customer. Let's say there's a scenario where the customer gets it and they're like, I don't like this. That's just a disaster. That's when you kill a whale for food, you eat the whole whale. And in that scenario, you're taking down trees and you're building something, and it's just a big waste. So reducing returns, this is one of those aspects where, from a profit perspective, you're incentivized to reduce returns for profits. You're also incentivized to reduce returns for the environment. So we want to do that at all costs. And so one of the challenges that we have as an online furniture company is we need to be sure that when we go and sell something online, that the consumer who's buying it receives the thing that they think they're going to get. So that means that the images that we put out there online really need to align with the product that the consumers get at the end, and that the product descriptions need to be spot on and perfect and represent the best representation of the product. And that reduces buyer's remorse and it reduces returns. But there's only so far you can do that. There's people who buy things and they want to return it, and that's always a struggle. So also things like packaging, that has been a major issue for us. I think in the past 5 or 10 years, especially in the past few years, the way that the environmental zeitgeist has changed has been really positive in the sense that there's been a lot more technological innovation for packaging to be not just available, but to be invented to the point where you can ship a buffet across the world and it doesn't break. Because if you ship a buffet across the whole world and it breaks, that's a waste. It's a sad case for the whole planet. So we're able to do that now in such a way where we're not using styrofoam. And styrofoam has been a major player, like over package your product because you don't want it to break because then it's all a waste. Well, we're able to do that with just very well constructed honeycomb cardboards. And a lot of the plastics that we were using are replaced with recycled fabrics that are biodegradable. And there's even some, eco-friendly plastics that have just trace amounts of plastic, but they look just the same as all the others. So these are great things that Simply Home didn't invent. These are things that have been invented recently that all companies can start using. And it becomes that scrupulous decision at the beginning for early adopters where can I afford to spend a little bit more to package my product in an environmental way? And we do, and we have, but those costs are coming down to the point where why wouldn't you? It's not really a factor in the same light. And I think that's the goal, because if we have this scenario where some brands differentiate themselves based on being sustainable, they will attract a certain audience, and that audience is willing to pay more, and that's fine. But the economy is not great right now, and people are pinched, and people cut corners. And so, we did a survey with CleanHub that was amazing, and that survey results was, with overwhelming statistics, people care about the environment. They want to do the right thing. They want to buy green products. And the survey was an overrepresentation of what you go to the market and you look at how people are actually voting with their wallet, and it isn't necessarily how they're filling out surveys, so to speak. Yeah. So I think that's a major challenge too, is finding the friction point of being viable with your audience, remaining positioning your business in such a way where you can sell good, honest furniture at a good price, without going so far that you're in a completely different audience, in a different sphere. Yeah. That's a major challenge for us, and it's getting easier.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, I mean, it's great that there's so much innovation now, and that's sort of evolving, but it's a really good point. And actually, Zoe, I'd love your perspective here, actually, because you've worked with a lot of big businesses, big FMCGs. They've got huge R&D budgets, across the board. They presumably are recognizing business as usual, isn't sustainable. But actually, we're not seeing them necessarily take the action that we're seeing Lush and Simply Home take. Why is that? What's stopping them? Because surely if they were leading the way, then others, it opens the doors for others to follow, right?
Yeah, sure. And of course, they like to say that they're leading the way all the time. But in reality, I think what we're seeing with the plastics treaty that's being negotiated at the moment, there's lots of NGOs and other some countries and other parties that are really pushing for refill systems, over single-use packaging. But that's the crux of that is the word system, because refill is a system, not a product. And so it takes a completely different approach, a different way of thinking about everything, as Caddy knows only too well, I'm sure. And when it comes to redesigning your whole system, when you're such a large company, trying to turn that around, like trying to turn around a huge ship, you can't do it overnight. It takes a lot of money, a lot of investment. So what we're seeing now is that these companies have, of course, done the work. That they know that the writing is on the wall for a lot of particularly unnecessary single-use plastics or difficult to recycle packaging or products because, for example, it's got more than one plastic or material in it, and so it can't be recycled, like the sachets that we see everywhere in the global south in particular. It makes products affordable to customers, but they can't be recycled anywhere in the world. So huge problem. And big companies' commitments to phase them out haven't come to fruition. So I think with the treaty negotiations taking place at the moment, a lot of companies are just holding back because none of them want to be the first to market because of that risk, because of the inherent cost and risk in being first to market with a different system. What if it doesn't work? If it's down to consumers to choose, consumers want you to make it as easy as possible for them to make the right decision. But if shifting to a refill, reuse system is going to be more expensive or less convenient, then customers are likely to, walk with their wallets and go for the competitor's product. So what's really needed is this international governmental regulation, so that businesses know, as Darcy was saying, they know that there's a level playing field, that everybody's going to have to play by the same rules. And then, at that point, if that does come out of the Plastics Treaty, if it is as ambitious as lots of people hope that it will be, at that point, then I think lots of companies are ready to make that step and possibly be, among the first to market with these new systems. But until that's demanded by law, it's very difficult to justify to shareholders, for example, that that's the right way to go. And if you think about it, lots of people's pensions are tied up in these publicly limited companies. The shareholders are our pension companies, for example, and so it's it might look like an easy demand to make on them, but at the end of the day, if the shareholders don't support it, then it's not going to happen anyway. So yeah, tricky situation.
Yeah. And question for all of you really, I suppose, but obviously, yes, I think we all acknowledge we need government intervention, and we can talk about that a bit more in a second. We need to see what comes out of the treaty, but the fact of the matter is we also need to act now. The problem's not going away, and we do need to be taking steps now. Is there collaboration happening across industries? Could industries be coming together more effectively without waiting for a treaty to mandate that? Is that even happening? And maybe we can talk about each intro. Yeah, Zoe, why don't you give your perspective on that?
Yeah, thanks. It's got a little bit of experience to share on that kind of thing. So, for example, just getting away from plastics for a minute, but to look at biogas, for example. So this is a technology where you can use food waste, unavoidable food waste, as your feedstock, and you process it and it generates biogas, which is a clean burning, renewable fuel to make electricity or heating or whatever. But to get wholehearted government support for that, you need the Minister of Environment, who is responsible for waste management. You need the Minister for Energy. You need the Minister for planning, urban spaces, and that kind of thing. And to get all of those different ministries aligned and all pulling in the same direction and prioritizing one particular pathway is notoriously difficult. And so, and the same happens across the board, trying to get different sectors, different, government ministries or different functions to actually cooperate and, for one to take the lead and the others to follow. It's just very challenging. So, yes, we need to see systemic change. If I had a pound for every time I've heard that or even said it myself, but actually, facilitating that and making it happen. We're seeing small things happening on the edges, but I don't think that it's quite at the core. It hasn't reached the heart yet of what we're doing.
Yeah. And Caddy, what's your, or Darcy, you looked like you were ready to jump in there. Did you have a view on that? And then Caddy, we can come to you on cosmetics.
Yeah, sure. In terms of the ways that we can collaborate together, that's all we're doing. The whole product life cycle has so many stages. The Simply Home owns a lot of the stages of our product life cycle, but not all. Things like we source our own materials, and we outsource shipping, though, to a large extent. And there's other things like the products at the end of life. We're not there at the end of life for our product. We're there at the conception, and we're there through the supply chain. We're there through marketing. But there's so many stages that we're not actually involved with. So when it comes to picking a shipping partner or where we're sourcing materials and whatnot, things that we can do is collaborate with good businesses that are producing good products. And that's really not easy. It's very hard. Like the science of it and the potential for greenwashing is it's wild how much of a rabbit hole that can be. But businesses need to keep at it and make sure that they're picking wise partners. Another way that we're collaborating in the market is just in terms of competition is a really healthy thing. We have lots of online furniture brands who we follow religiously, we respect. A lot of them are aspirational brands for us as well. And they're doing amazing things when it comes to becoming more sustainable. So our eyes on them and their eyes on us. If we have a great idea, if we launch a new product, it sets a new standard. So that's a great way, without government regulation, as you're saying, Nikki, to actually make progress just by making sure that the zeitgeist changed is followed by the businesses. And the more the consumers demand that stuff, the easier it is, the more technological advances we have. So I would say that in the past few years, that has spiraled up in a good way. I just hope that somehow we can catch up to the way that it's spiraling down in the past.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, actually, on the competition perspective. Yeah, I mean, it makes complete sense, actually. Caddy, what about in terms of Lush? I mean, I think obviously, you've got like the Green Hub, you're opening that up, people can come and have a look and sort of see what the end of life looks like. But just in terms of the whole process for you and collaborating with others in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of companies, including our competitors, right, we all have shared problems, whether it's end of life or whether it's, the recyclability issues, etc. So I think, it does just require an open source mindset in all of this. I think I often go back to the shampoo bar invention. I think if we had chosen to patent the shampoo bar, it wouldn't have had the impact that it's had now, which, is now all brands are using the shampoo bar within their ranges. And so, yeah, I think it requires that sort of level of open source IP. I think there have been some I was reading into the refill push in Germany in supermarkets, some really big supermarkets in Germany now really collaborating with a lot of brands on a pre-fill system, which seems and that's the level it needs, right, to have the public on board. It needs cooperation from all different brands to really push it. That's the only way we're really going to move it at that scale.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then, I mean, the role of government has come up a few times here. So I think, yes, like what's encouraging is there's a lot of really positive things. There is some collaboration with brands, but actually, is it ever going to go far enough when we think about, the situation that Zoe, you sort of laid out for us right at the beginning? So what is it that governments do need to do then? I mean, what do we need them? What do we need them to sort of push? Darcy, maybe you can start us off with your view on this.
Oh, sure. What the regulations are? I don't claim to.
Yeah, what they need to be, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm pro regulation because I think that it's necessary. The human condition is that we're a lovely, beautiful species, and we're also very flawed. And so we have proven time and time again that we won't make the right decision that's best for everyone if it impacts us negatively in the short run. And that's the scrupulous decision that we're lining up against here. So when governments collaborate between governments, because this is a global system, it can't just be one country doing it. I look at countries the same way that I look at businesses. Theoretically, there's first mover advantages for businesses to become more sustainable, because that's the direction that consumers want the products to be, and it's the right thing to do. But there are also massive risks because, as Zoe explained to me in a meeting that we had earlier, there are societal costs to non-environmental products, and society pays those costs. But I think that what we're saying here is that if businesses are really proactive, they pay those costs. And it's the same thing with countries. If a country is proactive and has an amazing regulation, and they're the only ones that are doing it, it just means that they're taking on the societal cost or the global cost of the cost of the non-sustainable business. And who's going to do that in the long run? I think that without a level playing field, no one will look at the massive tsunami of burden unless we have to batten the hatches and do it together so that it's equal. So what do governments need to do? They need to band together and make difficult decisions in such a way that the voting population won't be happy in the short run. And that's, I think that's the tricky thing that we're seeing even as we speak right now with some of the treaties trying to decide.
Yeah, for sure. And Zoe, what's your perspective here?
Sure. So yeah, just to add to what Darcy's been saying, really, I think there's a program, well, an approach called extended producer responsibility that governments have implemented. Many governments have implemented for different types of materials, products, wastes, whereby if a company is putting, say, I don't know, 10,000 tons of a particular plastic onto the market, then they have to pay a fee to help with the recovery of that plastic from the waste stream, make sure that it's managed as sustainably as possible. Now, this kind of thing, this is what individual governments can do. I think it's easier if you're in a global north country. It's very difficult if you're in a country that's got very porous borders and lots of unregulated business practices and that kind of thing. So in Europe, Europe's really led the way with this kind of approach. But there are challenges with implementing it in many global south countries. I think we ultimately need to move to restricting the amount of plastic that is put onto the market every year. It can't continue to grow at the rate that it's growing. Same with all of the resources that we're using. In the global north, we're really using far too many resources, and it's increasing every year. And it's not just the global north. We've got all these emerging economies as well, where people are becoming, let's say, middle class, so they can afford a fridge for the first time. Who's going to deny them that? Of course they want a fridge. Of course they want a car. It's normal quality of life stuff. But all of that then results in greater resource use, more greenhouse gas emissions, and more pollution ultimately. So, there are groups calling for degrowth in the global north so that the global south countries can catch up, but will still be within the Paris Agreement limits for climate change, keeping climate change to 1.5 degrees. But of course, degrowth, I mean, who wants that? That's a terrifying idea for lots of governments and businesses. And, is the electorate going to vote for a political party that proposes that? Probably not, unless they manage to pitch it really, really well. So yeah, I think overall we need governments to work together, as Darcy said. The Plastics Treaty is a great way for them to do that. So looking at a cap on virgin plastic production, bans on certain plastic products and chemicals of concern, and additionally providing support for countries in the global south, because where waste isn't managed properly, then it becomes pollution, and pollution knows no borders. So, pollution that happens anywhere in the world affects all of us, whether that's through, polluted groundwater, whether it's through climate change, melting ice caps and sea level rise, more storms and so on. So I think it's something that we all need to pay attention to wherever we live in the world, and make sure that we're just reducing the harm of our activities in whatever way we can.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Zoe. I mean, I think, when it comes to waste management, and you probably have more up-to-date numbers than I have, but I think, it's estimated about 2 billion people worldwide don't have access to proper waste management. So they have no choice, actually, but it either gets burned in sort of, in the backyard, or it just it gets into nature. And, that's why we end up with such a bad sort of ocean plastic pollution. And, we need to be connecting everybody to proper waste management. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think the figures, it's nearly 40% of all the municipal waste that's generated in the world is just leaking into the environment, either by dumping or burning, both of which are awful for human and planetary health. Yeah. But and that's why, the work that you're doing at Clean Hub is important there as well. Yeah,
no, for sure. But and like you say, but it does affect all of us. It's very easy to sort of think, well, that's a problem. It's happening over there. Of course, it's not. I mean, the oceans are all connected. Yeah. We're all breathing the same air ultimately. So we need to be thinking in terms of one planet. Caddy, do you have a perspective on this, and in terms of the roles of government? I mean, is Lush doing a lot in terms of the policy and advocating space as well?
Yeah, I think I really appreciated Zoe and Darcy's comments there around, the equity and justice piece of all of this. I think, in all honesty, I think that's what it requires is more of a holistic view, of any legislation on all of packaging and not just plastic. I think one of the things that have concerned me over the years, I suppose, is this push towards, with Plastic Free July, the push onto paper-based product, and that has got a massive deforestation implication and a lot of that is happening in the global south. And so, I think within any legislation, I think a whole holistic view on, that requires companies to really think about their whole, the life cycle of the whole product ranges and not just sort of looking at the end use side of things. I think it's a really important piece of any legislation coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we've talked, the latest, the UN plastic treaties come up a few times. So that's literally just finished in Ottawa today. Zoe, you're probably best placed, but maybe you can just kind of give us a quick snapshot of where the negotiations got to and what's next.
Okay, right, sure. So what's happening, generally speaking, is that a lot of countries are pushing for a global cap on plastic production, and they are pushing for bans and controls over problematic plastics and chemicals of concern. Now, how you go about deciding what is a problematic plastic, what is a chemical of concern? A lot of the additives that are included in plastic products, for maybe waterproofing or to give a plastic packaging a certain quality, if that is a chemical of concern, well, maybe it's not only used in association with plastics, maybe it's also used in other applications which the Plastics Treaty wouldn't cover. So, by banning these chemicals of concern just when associated with plastics, we might actually not be solving all of the problem that we think we are, because the chemicals will still be in circulation. But I think that overall, anything that can protect human health from exposure to chemicals of concern has to be a good thing, and it's a start. And that then gives you, if something gets phased out or banned, then it pushes the market to come up with alternatives that would hopefully be less harmful. So that there's going to be a lot of work happening between now and November, which is when the last negotiating committee meetings take place, on how we go about making criteria for these lists of what needs to be phased out or banned. And then there's also going to be work about how on earth we're going to finance all of this, particularly for countries in the global south, small island developing states and so on, that have just got enormous waste problems at the moment. The legacy waste alone is a huge problem. Waste has just been building up. We've all seen pictures of these vast dump sites, that are often on fire, very, very difficult to put out a fire on a dump site, as you can imagine. So, lots and lots of work to be done between now and the meeting in Korea in November. There's one group actually called the Business Coalition for a Global Plastics Treaty, which, if there's, I'm sure there's lots of businesses listening in today. So the website for that is businessforplasticstreaty.org. And that's a collection of, a group of over 200 businesses, many retailers and manufacturers as well, pushing for an ambitious treaty, which would include a reduction in unnecessary plastics, making sure that plastics and packaging made from plastics are easily recyclable. So not having lots of different materials stuck together, not having different polymers involved in something, so that it can be easily dismantled and streamed for recycling. And finally, reducing pollution through better waste management. So that's what the Business Coalition is calling for. And I think that it's well worth people taking a look on their website and signing up if you agree, and giving them your support.
Great, thank you, Zoe. And I'm curious actually on a point that Darcy had raised earlier about, actually how countries are similar to companies. Actually, why would one country sort of go first? And actually, when it comes to the negotiations and sitting around the negotiation table now, are all of the countries on board, or actually, are we seeing a united front in terms of tackling this, or not?
Yeah, interesting question. I think not. I think that countries come with very, very different perspectives on the challenge. So the Eurocentric view is that these things can be regulated and should be regulated, and there's a lot of high ambition there from European countries in particular. In countries where they just don't have the money or the expertise, if there is no one with a waste management qualification in the country, perhaps, which is the case in many small island states for sure, how it's really not so easy to work on these proposals for what needs to be included in the negotiations and so on. So there's a fear that they would be left behind, and they need a lot of support then to make sure that their views are heard just as loudly as the European views, for example. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you've got the plastic producing countries, the oil producing countries, who are absolutely resisting a cap on how much we produce, and they're looking for more of a waste management focused treaty, which kind of kicks the can down the road, and it's they're more keen on these downstream solutions, which of course, being a waste manager, I absolutely think we need these downstream measures, but as we found in the Global Waste Management Outlook, that won't be enough. We have to have international concerted effort to prevent waste from the very start.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, when you think about the small island states and actually and other countries that maybe don't have the infrastructure in place, I mean, again, that whole point about us all being very connected. I mean, a lot of Western countries actually have transported their waste to countries that don't have waste management in place in the past as well. So there is a responsibility there across the board, which, Darcy, you looked like you were ready to.
Sure. Yeah, I just had something to add to that. In hockey, it's just good hockey strategy. I'm a Canadian. In hockey, it's just good hockey strategy to be where the puck is going to be. So you don't need to be where the puck is, be where it's going to be. You'll be a great player. And that translates to business strategy at the same time. That's the first mover advantage. The first one in gets the profits. And that's great. Be the first one in. And I'm also talking about the comparison between countries and business here. Like what we're seeing with these treaties is that there are some countries who are just way behind, and it's going to hurt the most for them when these things get pushed through. And that's the way the wind is blowing. And so I think that the country that you're in is you're well suited, even if it hurts in the short run. In the medium and long term, you'll be well suited to push for a clean business. And that way, when one by one these regulations get imposed, you're at a huge advantage. And so that enables us to be able to get on the right bandwagon and support the right cause, because we can actually see the tangible results that will come from it. It's not just the self-esteem and pride that we'll have for doing the right thing. It'll be our economy and how well we've done for our countries. That's a very big thing for companies to realize and for countries to realize as well.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point, Darcy. And I think, sort of reflecting on all of this, obviously there's the UN treaties happening. We hope that we're going to get some sort of clear mandates and clear resolutions that come from that, but that's still going to take time. And I think, for a lot of companies, and actually generally, certainly a mandate, a mantra we have at Clean Hub is action over words. So actually, companies, we can't just be waiting for these things to happen. We actually need to be acting today as well, right? Even if, it's only helping us to get part of the way. Thinking about that, Caddy, what sort of advice would you give to brands that are at the beginning of their journey here, or just starting to think about this? Where do you start?
That's a really good question. I would say, in terms of advice, I would say have fun with it. I think some of the wackiest ideas that we've had have been the most commercially most successful ones. So I think there are lots of win-wins to be had, when doing the right thing for our planet. So yeah, I think I would say innovation has been the key really to for us at Lush. Looking at how do we really embed this thing, how do we really embed sustainability at the forefront of product invention, what customers really want, and that's what's really worked for us over here.
That's great. And what about you, Darcy? What would you sort of advise to brands?
I think it can be quite daunting if you're a brand and sustainability isn't a part of your ethos. That's a tough hill to start climbing. And especially when you look at these flagship brands like Patagonia, it's wonderful. but it's hard to go from 0 to Patagonia. And so I think that just a single step is all that's needed to know that no matter what you do, it probably won't be enough. You can always do more, but get into the game, start taking some easy wins. There are tons of easy wins that all you need is a mindset shift and switch a partner and change an aspect of your service or your business here. It's not as painful as you think, and just start there. So start small and see where it takes you, because it's a pretty nice slippery slope to be on, but you got to start the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, 50 minutes has flown by, as is often the way with these things. And we're starting to get a few questions coming in, actually. So linked to that point, maybe Zoe, you could give your perspective on this, but we've got one in terms of, so, I mean, we've talked about brands getting started and, but actually some brands are, they want to communicate, they want to do something, they want to communicate about it, but they're scared of greenwashing. I mean, I think obviously now a lot of brands are rightfully so getting called out, but there is a lot of, there's accidental greenwashing. And I think that can then put people off from actually doing anything, which kind of is counterproductive, obviously, for what we try to achieve. But I mean, what would you, what's your sort of counsel?
Sure. I think that the best advice is to be honest with your customers. No, like Darcy said, going from 0 to Patagonia isn't going to happen overnight. So, and the public are aware of that. They know that what we're trying to achieve here is a massive shift in societal behaviors and so on. So I think just by being honest is, and sometimes projects will fail, or they just won't be taken up by customers as much as you might have hoped, as we've heard from Kazi. But I think that what we've seen, the whole greenwashing thing, like marketing experts are brilliant, right? But I think sometimes they haven't really worked with the product team so much, and they've taken the idea and gone with it with this amazing language that just sounds very, very impressive, but then actually the reality isn't there to back it up. And so, companies have got into trouble because of that. But at the same time now, there's this green hushing where companies are reluctant to say anything lest they be accused of greenwashing. And that's a shame as well, because we need to be, openly sharing, like Darcy was saying, openly sharing our journeys, our efforts, the things that we're trying, mixing it up with the supply chain, trying different things, different materials, different ways of getting the product or the service to the customer without producing waste, or by producing much less waste, and definitely making sure that waste then, when it the product or the packaging, when it reaches the end of its life, that it's easily recyclable is key. Yeah. And I think that just by communicating that clearly and being honest, that's the best thing that companies can do.
Yeah, thank you, Zoe. And Darcy, you're a marketeer, as am I.
Yes.
I'm curious, just in your perspective on this. I mean, certainly, we're obviously dealing often with the marketing teams of brands that are partnering with CleanHub, and I think often sort of say actually it's really important that the people that are in the front lines of communicating know actually what's happening, because exactly as Zoe said, I think that's where accidental greenwash can happen, right? I mean, what's your perspective on that, and how you sort of think about it at Simply Home?
Yeah, greenwashing is a factor of honesty. That's for sure. So of course, in society, we want people to have integrity, and so when you go into a business, you can instantly find out right away if that business has integrity. So as an employee, align yourself with a business with integrity, and if you're a brand or a company who wants to be competing as a sustainable brand, Simply Home, that is a part of our messaging because it's a part of who we are. I think that you can diagnose yourself as a greenwasher if sustainability isn't a part of your core values. So for instance, if the owners or if the leadership team, or if it's a public company, if the stakeholders are not aware that is a bedrock part of the company that you are, yet you're evangelizing all these things because you're the new marketing director and you want to get in there and do that, that's a pretty quick way to self-diagnose it. That's not okay. And I think it needs to be initiative that's from the top down and heard loudly from the top.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Caddy, a question for you here. There's a question around, so, do we think there's a genuine threat to consumer attitudes towards waste with social media trends? So I think, there's a lot of that are sort of focused on excessive consumerism. So there's quite a lot of social media trends. You see it on TikTok now, you have to buy this and you have to have this in every color. What's the sort of impact of that, I guess? I mean, is this now the new normal?
Well, I hope not. But yeah, I think this is where legislation comes in. I think, I think there is the threat that, given anyone's choice, sustainability wouldn't be there. So I think this is where legislation comes in, and, things will have to change in that case. And hopefully that will be followed by, consumer patterns as well. But I think, yeah, it's a really tough one to answer. Yeah, I think for Lush's journey, we actually decided to come off of social media for exactly that reason. So yeah.
Well, that's good. Leading the way again there, Caddy. I like that. It's yeah, but it is. I mean, it is true. There is still, whether it's fast fashion or sort of fast consumerism, it still very much exists and is present, and we're still getting marketed and like crazy, right? And it feels like that has to change as well. So maybe then the last question, just to finish, Zoe, one for you. So let's try and be optimistic about the future to finish with. What do you think? I mean, looking ahead at the plastic treaty and in November, I mean, what's the most favourable outcome that we can expect from the treaty in November?
Well, yeah, great, thanks. So I think that first of all, we need to limit the amount of plastic we're putting onto the global market. It has to happen because it's directly correlated to how much plastic waste there is then, and because so many countries are failing to deal with it adequately, that just ends up with pollution. So yeah, a cap on global plastic production, lists of problematic plastics and chemicals of concern that need to be phased out. And also making sure there's more than adequate support for countries in the global south, because in that way we can, waste management in the global south is a quick win, really. Just imagine all of that waste that's currently being dumped or burned. If we could get that get it, well, first of all, reduce waste, and then of course make sure that whatever waste is generated is captured and recycled or disposed of carefully. It's a huge job creating area. I recommend to anyone, like, waste management is a growth area. It's a great career choice because it's very expansive. There's just so much going on. And as new products and materials come onto the market, then it does create new challenges, and it's all there to be solved. And it's all there to be solved, by bringing materials back into a circular economy, making sure that, as little as possible leaks as waste. So I think that, for now, I know I've worked in waste for 20 years. I've never seen so much momentum and positive energy and inspiration and innovation taking place. So it's a really exciting time to be in this space, and yeah, it's all to play for.
Lovely. And I think that's a very positive note to finish it on. So I just want to say thank you all for joining us today. I think that was a really interesting discussion. As always, it's one that I sort of feel you could carry on for hours. But yeah, thank you very much. And hopefully we can all continue on this journey and tackle plastic pollution once and for all. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Nikki.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Caddy and Zoe. Thanks, Clean Up.
Thanks. Nice meeting you. Thank you.